Welcome to Keep the Hotel Empty. Today we've kept the hotel empty to welcome back dear friend of the show, Ryen from Cruel Curses. And we are going to do a deep dive today, but for those that caught the original Cruel Curses episode, you know that Cruel Curses songs or albums are not exactly songs. They're a song, part of a bigger picture.
Did you call it an ass song?
No.
Some people would call them.
Singular.
Yeah.
So normally we would be doing the track by track thing and I'd actually have notes here, but this is a totally off the script thing in newfound territory. So I am grateful for the curveball and the change of pace you bring, my friend.
I'm grateful that you're even willing to try. I thought it'd be a cool companion for the 6 people and my wife who want to know maybe more about how something like this kind of comes together or what it was about or how we did it or any of that nonsense. So
for sure, because there are some major unique elements to this. So what we're going to talk about today, what we're going to get to talking about today is the piece you're just releasing called
Does the Devil Dream of Blue Skies?
I love that title.
Thank you.
That's why I wanted you to say I absolutely love that title.
Cool, yeah.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty of this roughly 22 minutes of sonic adventure that you've allowed me to be on a handful of times in the last week, I want you to tell me the big picture. Lay out the framework for the people that didn't see your first interview or got to go back and watch the first interview after they get extra interested by this one.
Okay.
And play out the lay of the land for me here.
Yeah, so last year, I think when we spoke, was it September last year? We talked, I think, in broad strokes. We didn't like drill down. We talked in broad strokes about like the idea of what the last thing we put out, which was Exorcism, how to perform an exorcism, which not technically, it is the first half of Does the Devil Dream of Blue Skies. So the full idea, and we're going to release an edit of them as one like 40-minute piece of music, and that's going to get released in late October. But the idea is that they are one singular. It's a little bit of a cake and eat it too. They're like supposed to be one singular piece of music, but they also are supposed to sort of be complements to each other. They're not like the same just sound for 40 minutes. They both have their own characteristics. So Exorcism was the first half of that, and Blue Skies, we call it Blue Skies in the band, and so I have to remember not to use the shorthand. But the new one that comes out on the 7th, that is the continuation of that. And what we talked about last time was formulating that kind of idea, doing that kind of thing, and then how to put all that stuff together. And Exorcism was kind of the culmination of the ones we had talked about last time, which were actually longer singular pieces of music called Fables, and then we have another one called Chronicles, and those are longer pieces of music, but
those two clock in like over 30 minutes each, yeah?
Fables is 36, and Chronicles is 32, I think. And Chronicles we never played live. We'll probably never play it live. It was like... That was probably the most complicated thing we've ever recorded, just in terms of like we'd never put keyboards on an album. Anyways, we're not here to talk about that, but like those two were like felt like proof of concept for figuring out how to do Exorcism, which even though Exorcism is shorter, it feels just as significant,
right? And
it feels hopefully just as well thought out. I've made the joke before. It's like shoving 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag. I feel like that's what Exorcism is. It figured out how to do that idea in less time, and Devil is just sort of a sonic complement and second half to that. So they're supposed to be sort of two pieces, but this is a continuation of the one we talked about last year.
So when you wrote Exorcism, did you already have that this was going to be a part one, or did that kind of come to be?
It was actually going to be 4 parts. And it was going to be massive. And each part was going to be maybe roughly the same amount of time, like 15, 20 minutes, but they were going to be like bigger genre shifts. Like one part was going to be like a lot of, because we're not an electronic band, but I wanted to really like look at beats and ideas electronically. We were going to have like a 4-part thing that was meant to be one giant piece of music. And eyes bigger than stomach is typically how it goes. It was just, we got to the point where it was like, I looked at it and I was like, I think if we just pare this down, it's going to be way more like feasible for the band to learn. And then also, not everything needs to be, like I was telling you earlier, we're going to be working on some music later in the year, and it's normal. One song is 3.5 minutes.
Normal. I like that.
Well, it's funny, but like, we have 3 or 4 releases that are just, normal songs that aren't 57 parts and 20 minutes long.
Right.
We're going to be going back to doing that in a couple months, but when we do things like this, it's like everything is possible because you could just keep like Frankensteining things together, and then you can kind of lose your way and like okay, got to reel it back in. So I usually end up starting with like way more. I'm like the guy at the Golden Corral, as my body figure would attest. I'm like, well, we're going to have all the meal. Oh, my God. Well, maybe 6 plates was my limit. Like that, I get to that point where I'm like, all right. So you got to rein it in. And I hope I think ultimately it's better for not being a 4-part, probably 70-minute thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, maybe we'll still go back to that idea eventually. But like, I also feel like there's enough connective tissue musically and enough difference musically between the 2 parts that if somebody put it in and listened to the full 40-minute thing, they would feel like, oh, this is different enough from beginning to end because it doesn't really repeat anything, but it also feels cohesive. That's the hope, is it feels like, oh, this is one big sonic journey I'm going on, and there's something new around the corner, but I'm also not like, I haven't lost like the vibe from minute 1.
Right.
That's the hope, but, I don't know.
Well, that's got to be one of the inherent challenges of writing a longer piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get into some of the specifics for sure, but talk to me about what square one looks like when you're sitting down saying to yourself, I'm going to write this ambitious piece of music. What's the first thing you do?
I guess I'd have to probably go back to the mindset that we had when we wrote, when we did Fables back in 2020. Because I was trying to figure out a way. Obviously, there was the pandemic stuff, and we were like, well, we're not going to just stop, so let's work on music. Right. And my idea was like, oh man, it would be cool to have an like, because you've heard albums where like they have like songs in between that like bridge other songs or they flow into each other. I was like, man, or like Pink Floyd has giant songs, and there's plenty of bands that no one's ever heard of that have huge, massive, long songs. I'm like, man, it'd be really cool to do something, but it keeps changing. So it's like, rather than like, well, we're going to play this riff for 9 minutes or something like a stoner rock band would, and there's nothing wrong with that. Right. But it's like, how can we kind of like new riff, new idea, new melody? So you have your section and it goes as long as it goes, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute, and then you move on to the next emotion, the next idea, the next mountain to climb, and you keep building, and then you go down, you go up. So you structure it like a normal song, really, you would. But like, you can almost get lost in the idea of like, well, everything has to be a chorus now, because you have to be like, well, this part's gotta hook you. Well, this part's, like, I think we made the joke last time, our bass player, Jeff, he called it oops, all bridges. Yeah. Because it's like, the idea is that like, you're always connecting to something else. But for me, because I have to put a lyrical vocal thread through 90% of it, I'm singing, my brain's always like, well, this part's I got to try to make it somewhat appealing vocally and catchy, and like, so then I get stuck in the mindset of like, well, this has to be a chorus. This feels like a verse. This can't be a verse. But then what I realized from Fables and then moving on to Chronicles is that like, it's none of those things. It's just literally a composition, and you're weaving a thread, and then you can't worry about, is this part catchier than this part, or is this part bigger dynamically than this part, or how, like you're up here and then you're down here. Because something that I realized looking back from writing the first 2 big songs is, and I still think it could be even tweaked with with Exorcism and Blue Devil that we do now, is that we'll have a lot of things where we build up really quick and then we'll suck it in really quick, and then we'll blow up a dynamic, and it's like, so it's a big loud, quiet, and it keeps going back and forth, and it's like almost had to like reel that in and not worry about that kind of stuff so much, because you start getting so focused on, because you've written music and it's like, the chorus is your payoff. Like, you want like, don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Right,
so it's
right.
I had to stop worrying about like, oh, this is going to be the part everybody wants to hear. Like, you get to a part where you write the parts and you're like, oh, that's going to be a cool riff, and hopefully people like it. I hope it's a cool riff.
So what was the process of divorcing yourself from that mentality? Because that, like you said, that is a hard thing to resist, because you're like almost programmed to be conscious of that.
Doing it twice and listening back to it as objectively as I could and getting feedback from people. The biggest piece of feedback I got from people that I trust, who I knew would really listen to it, was, like, oh, it's a lot to listen to, because it's like you have to sit down, you have to be committed, and there's not I want to skip to that part I liked at 4.5 minutes in, but I either got to fast forward like it's 1993, or I got to just wait. And I'm like, and I think we talked maybe a little bit about this last time. That was the whole point, is like, it's like everybody has an attention span today of like, well, the best thing and I want it now and I don't want to wait for it. It's like everybody wants like A+ quality and they want to wait no time for it. And it's like, well, giving you a 22-minute song that goes, a bunch of different places, your favorite section of that 22-minute song might be the section I like the least. And it's like, you could say the same thing about an album where an artist will put out 10 songs. You're like, man, I love tracks 1, 7, and 8. And somebody like, track 8 sucks. What are you talking about? It's
right.
like the subjectivity of it. So now applying, hypothetically, somebody's subjectivity to a 22-minute song, they're like, man, I loved the first 3 minutes, and then minute 4 through 7, I wanted to jump into a volcano and end it. So it's like you get to these points where you're like, well, you just have to realize that like any section could be a section that somebody's like, that's awesome. That's cool that they did that and they went there. So you almost have to look at it as almost like, I don't do drugs, but it's like microdosing a little bit. You're like keeping everybody on their feet about like, you're always giving them a hit. It's like the dopamine hit of like your slot machine, new part, new riff, new melody, new thing. So it's like my mindset has had to get to that point where it's like it's a slot machine. You're constantly pulling the lever on somebody and they're going to see new numbers and colors and hopefully they like them. And with a song you can do that, but you still have your like cornerstones. You're returning to your chorus or your verse or this melody. Even if you're changing things, a lot of times you're not asking someone to listen to, I don't even know. I think I counted at one point, but I think Blue Devil, if you count, depending on how you look at it, Blue Devil has like 80 plus parts, in 22 minutes. So it's like every 30 seconds, 20 seconds, it's a new part, it's a new tone, it's a new vibe, it's a new thing. And you're like, oh, okay, wait, what happened 3 minutes ago? So it's like, hopefully, if you like what we do, if you don't like what you do, it's not going to matter. But if you like what we do, you want to go back and listen because there's like, hopefully layers to it, So that's what's gotten me through my mindset change on like, man, is this have chorus potential? Is this people going to get people? It's like, I'm just hoping that like, I'm just a slot machine because who knows what you consider a really cool moment and somebody else won't.
Well, and it's interesting you say it. It almost kind of makes it so that that immediacy and that instant gratification that people want, they can have repeatedly in a piece of work that almost seems like you couldn't have it at all.
That's interesting. Yeah. I think that there is a reality to that. I think that the hardest thing is that you get the people who, like I have friends or people who they really don't want to give it the time of day because they're like, man, it's 22 minutes or man, it's 36 minutes and it's like, and they're like, then they come see it live and they're like, oh, that was really awesome. I'm now going to go listen to it. And it's like, okay. So it's like, then they it seems like people get it in reverse, It's like, that's cool, I guess, but we work really hard to record it. But
yeah, and that's something I want to get to as well. But do you find it important to challenge the listener or is that just something that's happening as an aside?
So you mean like actively, like I'm gonna actively work to make this riff or this section? Like
No, like you're creating pieces of music that, like you said, they might not be for everybody. They're not going to be for the pedestrian listener. Someone's going to have to want to take the ride.
Yeah,
I mean it more in that.
Yes, I think take the ride is a great way to put it because I think that's what these longer pieces of music. And I've even heard it about, like our more conventionally structured songs. It's just sort of like we get the prog label thrown at us, which I don't love it. I've learned to live with it, but it's like I'm like we're a rock band, like we just play rock music. There's loud guitars, there's drums, and but like I want people to sit down and feel like they have to actively pursue what's happening around them rather than just like they could put it on and like just not think about it. And there's a time and place for music like that. And I'm not saying you couldn't, and that, again, that's a subjective thought, but like I want people to feel like they put it on and it's like they're reading a book or they're watching a movie. They're not on their phone. They're not distracted. They're listening and they're genuinely listening. I'm hoping that, those pieces of music engender somebody to really just be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and like in my chair with a drink and I'm going to listen to this song. Or I'm in the car and I'm as focused as I'm going to be and I'm going to listen to this tune rather than like, oh, I'm going to whatever, I'll put it on the background and who knows.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm meaning. Like you have to, maybe challenge is a bit of a tall word, but like you have to, you're deliberately creating something that somebody needs to actively engage in if they're going to get what there is to get.
I want, again, who knows what they're doing behind closed doors, naughty boys. But, I want commitment from the listener. I want them to feel like if they like what we do, then they're going to feel like, well, I already like this, so I'm going to commit to really taking it in. And again, even the people who like my band, they're still like, oh, it's a long time, okay, and then a lot of the feedback I got is like, wow, when I really sat down and listened to it, not just tried to listen to it, like gave it the attention that, I think it deserves, people are like, oh, that's awesome, that's really cool, I'm really into it. So it's like, yeah, it's not for everybody though. So, it's a commitment. It's not like, here's 3 minutes, listen to that. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've listened to it probably 4 or 5 times in the last week or so, and I self-disclosed I am a prog guy. I love tons of long songs. I can list off zillions of them.
Right.
And I think one of the hallmarks of a good long song is that after you get familiar with it, it starts to not seem that long anymore. I get to the end of 21 minutes and some change, and I'm like, I could do that again.
Cool.
I
think that's the best compliment, honestly, I could get, is because then you don't feel like you're like, man, that felt like 45 minutes. What did I do? Like you're engaged enough, and it's that goes back to what I was talking about. Like you keep slot machine changing things, colors, sounds, whatever. It's like you're being engaged enough, and there's enough like dopamine hits because it's changing that you're like, oh, it's over.
Right.
Cool.
And one of the things too that kind of struck me is like when you first start to listen to longer pieces of music, you got to kind of find your way in, and you don't know how the parts fit together and exactly what the story is yet. When you're composing these pieces of music, one of the things you touched on that I absolutely want to make stark note of, the parts don't repeat.
No,
so
almost never. There's motifs that might come back a little bit if you're listening, but yeah, it's not like here's the chorus 17 times or whatever. Yeah.
Well, and even like Pink Floyd Echoes, you got the first part of that song that's like a song, and then you got that middle bit that's a trippy wonderland for 17 minutes, and
then they come back.
Then we make our way back to the song.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was, not wanting to sound like but like that was sort of like my gimmick in the beginning with Fables, Chronicles, Exorcism. Exorcism broke the rule a little bit. This kind of does a little bit too, but not really. Where it's like Exorcism has the opening, and then everything in the middle is just like, new part, and then at the end of Exorcism, it basically was written to be like it's a coda. It's the beginning of Exorcism played in reverse, arrangement wise. So we play it in reverse, and then that connects right to Blue Devil.
And did you know that was going to be a segue like that, or it just happened to be that you were able to work that?
I knew that idea was going to be that way, but I didn't have the parts for Blue Devil figured out yet. I knew Blue Devil was going to be, because I had already made the decision by the time we finished Exorcism that we're only going to do one more part. So the 4 idea part was out of my head, and Blue Devil was actually, not to jump too ahead, but like Blue Devil was the first 2/3 of Blue Devil are fairly mellower and like kind of more like psychedelic, jammy, verby vibe, and then the last third of Blue Devil is like just balls to the wall, heavy.
It ends with that raunchy bass at the end. Is a hell of an ending.
Yeah, there's riffs and so that was supposed to take back the vibe of Exorcism, because if you listen to Exorcism, the end of Blue Devil is this horrid, but I love it, synth sound where it's If you were to put it on repeat, it's supposed to be just a cycle. So it's like the beginning of Exorcism starts at like Blue Devil ends. So they're basically one big loop.
Love that.
And the vibe of Blue Devil, the end, the last third, is supposed to kind of capture the heavier, darker moments of Exorcism, but it's not the same riffs or anything. It's just more of a tonality thing. But for the first 2/3 of Blue Devil, it's fairly more mellow and jammy and kind of like mid. It's not like amps are on 10 a lot. And that was... I didn't know that was originally going to be its own thing, and then the end of Blue Devil was going to be just like a heavy, like 10 or 12 minute kind of like its own third thing, and I just put them together, and I was like, we'll just do 2. But I knew at the end of Exorcism, by the time we had pretty much gotten the final mix and we knew we were moving on to Blue Devil, which we started last summer, I was like, this is going to, like, the first drop of the last beat of Blue Devil, of Exorcism, is the beginning of Blue Devil, and they just keep going. So I knew that, but I wasn't sure... Because like you were talking about writing parts, like is like the first part I wrote for Blue Devil wasn't the first part you hear, right? So it's like it kind of becomes a little bit like grabbing Legos out of a thing. Like you write, oh, that's a cool thing. Maybe I can do something. Oh, that's an interesting part. Well, I don't know how that's going to fit in. All right. And then eventually something clicks when you're writing all of these parts and you're like, that could be how you intro. Cause that kind of goes back to what you asked about, like, divorcing your mind from like everything's a chorus, or how do you like let go of the importance of a part? It's like, how do you start one of these things?
Well, that was actually
you have to start it at if you start at 10, where do you go from there? 11? There's no 11. Oh my god! Like, you know, or if you start here, how do you build up? Or if you always start like here, like you can kind of get lost in the way of like, if you're going to tell somebody to listen to a 32-minute piece of music or whatever, you feel like it has to be like epic, or like it has to start a certain way. There's got to be so much fanfare or whatever, and it's like, no, it's just like, it's a song. It's still a piece of music. It's still just a song that's going to go in the directions that it goes, and it's going to start the way it starts. It could start on 10 and never get back to that. And I think if somebody had an idea to make it work and start with the biggest riff you've ever heard in your life and then shrink down to nothing at the end, that would be cool too, right? Like, I think that would be probably more of a feat than ending loud.
Right.
So, but anyway, but yeah, that kind of like wraps back around.
There's no rules.
No.
I'm the biggest fan of that one.
That's what's fun about doing these things, is you feel like you kind of like, again, you're breaking the convention of like, well, we got to come back to this. Well, this was safe, and this is our money. This is our money moment. This is our money shot. This is the chorus. We got to come back to the chorus again at the end, or, you know, like, there's nothing wrong with writing songs like that. I love that shit. You know, I love writing music like that. This is just a way to like feel like you're trying something new, because I've been writing songs since I was, you know, I've been playing music since I was a kid, but I've been writing my own songs since I was like in my teens. So it's just it's challenging for me. Like you said, challenging the listener. It's challenging for me because I second guess every second guess that I second guessed 10 times every time I'm writing a part. So it's like, oh no, this sucks. I should have put this here. Oh, why did I leave that riff out? Like, I was going through my phone the other day to see if there was any riffs that I didn't use for Exorcism that maybe I could work into a new song or something like that. And I was like, oh, why did I not do that? Or, oh man, I chose that over this. What was I thinking? Like,
well, that's a good sign though unto itself. That you know you got sparks in the tank still. Yeah,
but it's one of those things. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme of the skeleton at a mixing board covered,
yes.
And it's like the mix is almost done. You can apply that to almost anything in life, business, but the same thing is like the song's almost finished being written, and you're like, you know, you could always keep changing it and adding it, and then you listen back and you're like, this is horrible. Why did I do this? Who do I think I am? That's how I feel most of the time. It's like the imposter syndrome thing. But these long songs just kind of help push all that away. 'Cause like, I'm just going to do this thing that's even less accessible than what we do anyway.
Right.
And you know, the people who really want it. It's like I might have made this comment last time, but it's like, hey Seth, what's a really weird fruit that like not a lot of people like?
Lychee.
Yeah.
It's like that.
That's exactly what it is. I'm trying to think if I've ever had lychee. Sorry, my brain just...
They're like those weird grapes.
In addition to the Chris Hemsworth ads, can you edit out the 47 seconds of Mind Numb? No, I'm kidding. Like, yeah, it's like, it's just a weird fruit. The songs are weird fruit. Like, if you really like that lychee, cool, you're in. But if you're like, you're not going to want it. And so, yeah.
Well, and I do want to talk about the fruit, but there's two things that I want to get to before that
okay.
we don't normally get to do in the album deep dive that I feel is extra pertinent for this. The first one is, how do you write these pieces? I know I've seen a little bit of your whiteboard insanities and post-it note trails.
Yeah.
How do you do this, and where do you get to start incorporating the band?
Okay, so typically I write most of the stuff. I have an acoustic guitar, and I'll sit down and I'll write it. I like to play in goofy tunings. So like the tuning for Exorcism and Blue Devil is a play off of Dadgad, which is, you know, Jimmy Page used a lot, but it's a folk tuning, but it's like a D-G-D-G-A-D, so it's called Dig-Dagad. So that helps, you know, kind of get you out of your zone a little bit to change. Like, I'm working with like a new tuning this while I'm writing right now, and it's like, I'm like, oh my god, the world's opened up. You know, it's like there's a funny meme I've seen. I guess I'm really being a millennial with how many memes I'm bringing up, but like there's like an old, I don't know, like 16th century painting, and the guy's like, and he's like the first discovering drop D. Sometimes I feel like that when I try a new tuning out. But,
for real?
Yeah, but the way it works is usually I pick up a guitar and I start strumming and trying to put my hands in places I don't put them normally. And then I'll try to start singing a melody or figuring something out. But I'm a drummer. And as long as I play guitar longer in bands, and I fronted bands longer than I was a drummer in bands, but drums were my first instrument. So typically what happens is I start hearing the skeleton. I start hearing the song when I get up and walk. So I'm like, okay. And I have a drum set at my house. So I'll usually sit down and I'll just like put my iPhone up and I'll like get the idea of the beat and then I'll work it out. And then I try to figure out something hopefully interesting that, because I love a lot of bass lines and groove parts that are like really glove in hand kind of. I really like that old school stuff where it's like the bass and the drums are together doing something, and then the guitars can kind of springboard off of that.
Right.
So the bass is like the secret weapon. And when you have a bass player as good as Jeff, it's really easy. But like they're together. So the rhythm section is like holding the tethers to the guitars, because I like to write guitar parts where they're not doing the same thing usually. Like we'll harmonize on a lick, but a lot of times Nick and I just don't play the same part, because it's like you want to create sounds and textures. So it's like we have two guitars, let's use them. So usually it starts with one guitar part, and then I'll figure out a groove or a feel, and then I'll record a drum demo, and I'll start playing over that and make sure it's really working, and then I get a bass line going, and then I'll just kind of like on my phone, I'll just sort of multi-track record stuff and like hear that it's working from an acoustics sense, because I don't almost ever write with amps or anything, because I think it's really easy to be like, oh, if I just put a bunch of distortion and delay and reverb on this thing, it'll sound good. It's kind of like just like if you get a really good hamburger, you almost don't need mayonnaise or ketchup, right? So it's like really dangerous. I obviously I love mayonnaise and ketchup. Which camera do I look into? Set that one, mayonnaise and ketchup all day. But you know, for me, like it's a purity test. If the idea sounds big or badass or cool, hopefully with just an acoustic and a shitty iPhone demo of my drum part and the bass line and everything sounds cool acoustic, when I go and I plug it in on an amp, hopefully it's gonna like
cook with gas.
Go to the next, it's gonna go to the next level. So that's usually how I do that, and I'll figure out, you know. Sometimes I'll end up writing Nick's guitar part first, you know, and then I'll write a rhythm guitar part later, or the second guitar part. And then typically once I have that, you just move on to the next section and the next section. But like I was saying with you, with these long songs, you're just writing parts. You're not like, well, this is my verse. Oh, that's my chorus. And you can kind of get that vibe. I'm sure when you've written, you're like, oh, I have this really cool section and it fits in really well. I don't know where I'm going to put that. Maybe that'll be a bridge. I don't know. For this, it's like, it could be anywhere. And that's really cool. And there's like probably a dozen sections on Blue Devil, actually, specifically, that I was like, that's an interesting thing. And I have no idea if I'm going to be able to use it, because I don't know where that would fit in. And then it eventually, you kind of like change the key, or maybe you change the riff a little bit and you're like, oh, now it works. So usually I come up with these parts, and then I go in to Nick and Jeff, and I'm like, all right. And I'll sit down and I'll show Nick his guitar part, make sure he gets it. I'll show Jeff the bass line. And a lot of times, because bass and drums are so connected, Jeff will get his bass line, but I'm sitting behind a drum set with a guitar showing them their parts. And then I put the guitar down, and then we start playing. And I'll be like, okay, Jeff, you and me. Okay, you got the, no, and then I'll have to pick up the, yeah, remember that? Okay, yeah, great, you got it. Okay, cool. And then it's just like they're playing the stuff that I wrote, and then it's just like the clay is getting molded and molded and molded. And then it's like a real thing happening with amps on. And then we'll discuss like, cool, throw some distortion on that. Can you throw your octave on that? Can you play it with the fifths on? Or, you know, then we start like tweaking the sound or whatever a little bit. And then, boom, there's a part. So like that's kind of like the quick from like me by myself figuring out all the parts. I figure them all out, and then I go into practice and I show Jeff and Nick, and then they learn them. We get them together. I'm behind the drums. They come together like just like a normal band would practice. We practice them up, and then boom, their parts together enough, and then you move on to the next thing. So the downside to that, not having a drummer, we have a live drummer, Connor, who's like 807,000 billion times better than I'll ever be. Kid's incredible. But he just plays live for us, and he's totally cool. Like, you just do your thing, man. I'm happy to just be here. It's really
awesome.
I'm grateful for that, rather than some like egotistical, you know, 'cause he's younger than us and he's like, I'm so much better than you. He's never like that, thankfully. He's
Shout out to all the team players.
Dude, it's hard. I'm telling you, man. It's really hard. One of the hardest things about being in a band is dealing with egos. And I'm lucky that I have guys. Yeah, I started the band with a very clear objective, and we talked about this last time, but a clear objective, like, I have all the parts. I'm going to write everything. If that's not for you, I totally get it. It's no problem. There's 100 ways to skin a cat, and they're all viable. So it's like,
yes, amen to that attitude.
Yes, but yeah, so that's pretty much how it goes, and we'll just work the shit out of the idea, and it'll just come together. And typically, there's not really I think sometimes it can get frustrating for Nick and Jeff, and they bear with me because we'll play something, and the biggest thing that changes is like we'll do something, and they'll be like, okay, how many times do you want to do that riff? They'll ask me, and I'll be like, let's do it 8 times, and we'll do it 8 times. It's like, okay, cool. And I'll be like listening back after we record a demo in the room, and I'm like, oh, that needs to be 12 times. And then I'll hear like, oh, that riff's kind of repetitive. I should change something up in the middle here, and then change it up a little bit over. And then I'll come back and be like, guys, now that I've heard it, I want to do these changes. And they're like, oh. So it's like they have to kind of bear with me because like
you're a moving target over there.
Yeah, I get stuff by myself. What I've noticed is I'll get stuff to like 85%. Like the idea's there, what I want is there, and then they'll learn it. We'll get it together, and then I'll go away and listen to the demos we've done from practice, and I'll make tweaks, not like massive. There's sometimes where I have massively like renovated a section, and they're like, "What?" But they bear with me. But like, you know, typically it's like that. But that's very valuable for me as a songwriter is to have them be able to be there and do that, because then I'm able to go take a demo of that section with amps on and it's loud and the drums are there. It's not this acoustic demo that I'm like, this sounds okay. Oh my God, I like chocolate
yeah,
chip
we're past
cookies.
smell test round 1.
Yeah, so it's like this gets you more close to like, you know, what it's going to be, and it's like, oh, this is kind of boring, or oh, that vocal melody I had's now not jiving for some reason, that it's distorted, and the vibe is way heavier than I thought, you know, or like these little things that you just don't even think are going to happen, and you're like, oh shit, how do I solve for X now? And then I have to change things, and I come back to them the next practice. I'm like, hey, so we're going to just completely destroy that riff, and I've reworked it, and they're like, oh, that happens rarely, but sometimes there are like, you got to take a hammer to a wall because you thought it was going to work, and like the kernel of an idea works when you've got everybody going. So that's pretty much the A to Z of it.
Well, being able to have a demoing process and a composition process happening simultaneously is a feat unto itself. That seems like you've been able to work that into an upside. That
because of them, because really of those two guys. Like because I used to write totally alone from square A to Z, and what would happen a lot of times is I would compromise on the composition or the idea because I was alone, and I was like, I don't want to record the dorms. I don't want to record this. It'll be fine. It's fine the way it is. Or I would record a song, A to Z, all the parts, everything's done, amps on, like it's a full song, and then I'm like, I kind of wish there was the bridge was different here, or this or that. And then I end up wanting to change things anyways. So it's like the fact that I have these guys that are willing to be there and like roll with the punches, is good.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I think the biggest learning that we had from Blue Devil, because we recorded all of it ourselves, and we sent it away to be mixed and mastered to our buddies at Audibility. Shout out to Billy Pratt, my sweet cherub of mixing mastery. He, what we ended up doing, because we recorded it all at our old drummer before Connor. Our old drummer has a rehearsal and studio space, and he let us use all of his gear, and we recorded it ourselves, which was new for us. So me and Jeff did the engineering, and we were like, what the fuck do we do? And, you know, like almost about to blow our brains out.
That's a big room to wander in the dark.
Well, that we tried to sandwich it all together, where it was like we were writing, we played a bunch of shows last summer, and we came right off of that into finishing Luring Blue Devil, but we had dates for scratch tracks, and I was changing things up to the last minute on those guys, and they were troopers, but like I don't want to do that again. Like,
right.
Like our approach from now on is like we don't set a date to record scratch tracks until it's 100% like that's locked in, that's done. You know, like sometimes you can have fun moments in the studio, like on Blue Devil. There's a section where poor Nick, but I was like, hey man, you know what I'm hearing here? I got these few notes. It would be cool if you played these on a slide. Could you do this on a slide? And he's like, it's totally not the part that I have been rehearsing. I'm like, yeah, you'll be fine. He's like, oh my God. You know, like in the studio last minute kind of thing. And it's like, the beauty of the situation we had this time is we didn't have a clock on the wall. We weren't paying exorbitant amount of money to be in a studio doing it. So we kind of could just get away with futzing around. But like, you know, I think for the sake of like, we were doing it ourselves for the first time, and it wasn't like we were just recording a song. It was a 22-minute piece of music. You get to a point where it's like, you know, I was making some changes on the fly that were, you know, it would have been better if I would have had the foresight, you know?
Right.
So that was the biggest lesson I've learned, is that like, you got to slow down. You don't have to go record so quickly. You can just, like make sure you have the song 110% and then go record. So
Well,
that's part of that
before we
process.
get to question 2, which is going to be the recording portion of the show,
Yeah.
I got a mission drift. Do you always let instinct determine the arrangement?
Yes, I think so. Actually, yeah, I would say so. I don't know. I guess the counter to that would be just like trying to maybe I'm going to make this riff work here no matter the cost.
Exactly.
And again, that's subjective to a listener too, right? Because like somebody could listen to a section and they could be like, "Oh man, that A didn't go with what he thought was B there," or something like that. And but I try to be like, especially when you have like a pile of Legos, some things just naturally get written and they flow into other parts naturally. Like, oh well, that worked out and I didn't have to do anything.
Right.
Other things take a lot more time, and like you'll have a part written. It's like a puzzle because it's like you might have the part you need written, but you don't remember. You don't know. You don't like. Oh man, I had this melody that would be perfect for this, and I didn't even think about it. So a lot of times, I like to try to just what feels natural. And a lot of times, it feels like it does come together, and we've done. This is our 4th iteration of these big chunky songs that it's like it feels like I have it pretty well under my fingers in terms of like I know the dynamic that needs to come next, in my opinion. So it feels pretty easy to either know if I've written a part or I had a kernel of an idea that I could start carving away at. But yeah, I would say I'd like to believe it is instinctual, and some of it. And this might sound like, but like this, once you get a part together and the vibe is you've as a songwriter said that's the vibe I want for this section, then you've kind of given up, I think, control to a degree that now the part has an identity, and you're just sort of like, okay, cool, the vibe is this, so this is the part now. It's not really like, because I could put a funk part next to a metal part next to a country part next to it. You could do whatever you want. There's, like you said, there's not rules, but there's also like, there's something to be said for like, you don't want to just completely like lob grenades everywhere and just do weird
I guess it's
genre shifts and stuff.
I guess it's kind of the dichotomy of the song dictating to you in a rigid way, or the song presenting to you what your options might be.
Yeah, and I've had people say that, like, oh, like you got to play for the song, you've got to like, and then like like people when they drill down just a layer deeper, then I'm like, well, then who's the songwriter, right? It's like, oh, well, yeah, so isn't the songwriter basically in charge of what the song wants? And it's like, yes, but I think after a while, to a degree, it's like if you as the songwriter, or Nick, Jeff, and I, when we get the part together and we're like, okay, that's the vibe is there, we got something going, you kind of be like, that's it, that's cool, and that is not going to get superseded because we want to throw riff X in over here.
Okay,
or
yeah,
like,
that's what I
like
want.
I really want to do a solo over these chord progressions because I really like it, but that doesn't really need to be there because there's other performances that are going to happen here. Like, it's the same thing. I think of it, it's sort of like being a drummer and wanting to do a drum fill all the time. It's like, yeah, you can do a drum fill, and your drum fill can be crazy all the time, but should it be?
Right.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
So I think the same thing comes with like composition and then like letting instinct guide you. It's like just because you can, especially with a long piece of music that has less guardrails.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, just because you can put this vibe next to this vibe or solo over this part or scream your balls off on this thing or like doesn't mean you should. Like, and I think you just have to kind of like trust that. And again, it's subjective. Like I've had people, we did an acoustic EP a couple years ago off on a little tangent, and I'm one of the most proud of that thing because it was the most different thing we've ever done still to this day. And I had a bunch of people say, this is really cool, but you guys should have, like, it should have been heavier. Like, and I'm like, all we've done is heavy stuff, and we wanted to do something acoustic. And they're like, yeah, but it could have been cool if there was like heavier guitars on it. I'm like, it's like everyone's always going to say like, oh, you should have done this or you could have done that. When you're not the one at the helm of the ship having to drive through, it's really easy to be on the island and be like, why go that way?
Right.
You should go that way. The winds are going, you're stupid. It's like, you're like, all right.
Well, one of the cardinal rules is not to shoot all over yourself.
Oh, dude, I'm basically my own flock of seagulls at this point.
Oh.
I'm just shoulding all in my mouth.
Don't.
Yeah.
That was one of the ones my mom brained me with as a kid that whenever I hear someone say the word should, I instantly, don't should all over yourself.
No, my wife is actually really good at that. There is no shoulds. There is no shoulds. I'm like, well, when you're 17 and life's a fucking magical place with no responsibilities, you don't have to should anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but I like it.
So when you get a monolith like this together, and instinct has led you to this piece of music, start to lead me to how you logistically put this thing together, and then I want to talk about what it sounds like and the product you got out of the deal.
So basically, kind of building off is like getting together, teach the guys the parts, we play it, we record it on our phones, I listen back to it, we make changes to it, and then you just keep stacking the parts. And I come to the guys and say, okay, like usually at a practice, I'll have, when we've worked on a long piece of music like this, I'll try to have 5 to 10 parts ready to go to teach them, and we just see how far we can get into practice. No, book, I almost smacked you. We'll see how far we can go into practice, and then we learn what we learn, we polish it up, and then we come back next week, and then we learn more, and we make sure we polish what we learned before, and we just keep it. You're basically like building the plane as you're flying it a little bit in that regard.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. And then once we feel confident, we go to record it.
So when you go to track it, you're already able to play it beginning to end.
No. Blue Devil wasn't like that. Exorcism was, Fables was, Chronicles was, Blue Devil wasn't. We recorded Blue Devil in 2 chunks. And again, some of that was due to the nature of we were recording it for ourselves for the first time. And Jeff and I were learning how to engineer, and like, we got help setting up mics the right way and doing stuff, and we were just like, this looks right.
Sounds good.
We got help. No, we got a lot of help. We had Billy come in and help us set up mics for the drums and do a little bit of like some presets for the drum sounds and stuff like that. But by and large, we recorded the first 2 sections of Blue Devil. Because a 22-minute song, I wish we could record it all at once, but like Pro Tools would melt down. There's just no way. So we have to figure out, which is hard, where is a natural cutting point. Like this is basically 7 minutes of this, and this is going to be 6 minutes. So we recorded the first 2 chunks of Blue Devil, which was probably about half of its runtime during the summer. We'd start learning it, and then we were setting dates to do scratch tracks and recording it, which is what I was kind of saying was we won't do that again. It was just like, oh, we have access to all this stuff. We can just go quicker now. We don't have to wait and get it all done and then go to a studio. We can just do it. And it was like, we probably should have waited more like a normal thing because everybody would have felt more comfortable in recording it. But recording it is... how do I explain?
Do you track it live or do you multi-track?
We multi-track. So what will happen is we'll record the scratch tracks first to a click, so we have to figure out the tempos. There's a ton of different time signature stuff, but
right.
like I just say, just keep it in 4, don't give me an accent because I lose my mind. Like this section's in 9/8. I'd be like,
so when the meter changes in the songs, your click doesn't when you're tracking?
No.
Oh my God.
No. I can't do it. Like people, people think that it's like we have to sit down and like map out all these time signature shifts and stuff like that.
Oh, been there.
Nope, we don't do it. I just have it click, 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 just no accent, just click,
the tempo.
Just the tempo. Actually, there's been accents on the 4, and I've actually gotten used to, or not on the 4, like the 1,
yeah.
But it stays in 4/4. So like the beginning of Blue Devil's in 5/4, 5/8.
Right. You meter change all over
yeah,
that.
and it's just like I know where the accent's going to be. So I'm used to dancing around it as a drummer.
That's fucking crazy.
Well, no, it's honestly because if I had the accent changing with me on a thing, I'd shoot myself. I'd be like, oh no, I'm scared. I'd be anticipating like this. It's going to change to and I barely can count half the time. I just feel it out. I'm My guitar player Nick and Connor, our live drummer, they're like super studious. They're like this, and then if you do this in the 3rd house, and then you divide by 7 and make love to a lamb, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. So that's in 7/8 then. I don't know what you're saying to me. I've learned more from doing it, but as a drummer who like I don't really know theory, I don't know that stuff, and that it's like that's kind of goes back to your instinct thing. It's just
right.
a feel thing. It's an instinct thing. I'm just like going for what I think is going to sound cool and maybe like against the grain, like, oh, you think it's going to do this, but it's going to do that. And it's like, I work hard at that stuff, and I know that it's not 4/4 or whatever, but like, if I try to think about it, like, okay, I'm going to count 5, my left eye, I burst
wild.
the blood vessel. Yeah, so the meter's in 4, and we play through it, and I learn how to dance around the click when sections are switching. So usually it's scratch, we do play them to a click, and then we have our scratches. The scratches are tight enough to the click. They don't have to be perfect, but they're tight enough to the click. And then I sit down and, one of my big, like personal pride things is like, there's no quantizing and there's no triggers. There's no samples. So it's like, I'm going to tune the shit out of the drums. I'm going to practice the hell out of my parts. And I could always be better at that, especially with the drums. But we're not editing. If I fuck up that kick drum part, I have to redo the part.
Yes, amen to that.
And we try to
kids listen to that one.
Well, no, because it's like I want to know that in 35 years when I'm old, and I'm like, I'm like, I listen back to it. I'm like, I did that. It was me. It wasn't a machine. Because it's really easy to. I'm going to fix the kick drums perfect. I'm going to move the snare. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it's like once in a blue moon, if like I did a, because I try to do the whole section. So if it's a 6-minute section, I'm going to do the whole section.
Right.
There's certain parts in Blue Devil that we just took chunk by chunk because I'm fat and it was tiring.
And it's better than doing a punch.
Yeah, so we try not to punch in. Like the closest we'll get is like we'd have a section, and there was 3 sections at the very end of Blue Devil that I was like, all right, just loop me that section, and I just played the drums like I did the 20 times we got a track, and it was like, okay, that was it. It wasn't like we edited 17 drum tracks. It was like that was the one.
Yeah,
so
not comping.
Some of that stuff hurt me because I'm like, I just want to get it perfectly, one take. I'm awesome. High five. Let me go eat a hot dog. It's not. Sometimes you gotta like let go because you are in the studio, and it's like. You have tools at your disposal, but guitars and bass were a little bit more lax with like, and it's easy. Bass is not so hard to, you find your transients, you can edit some stuff. Guitar is the same way if your tone is locked in, but the drums, it's like I try to keep it relatively pure. It's like that's my take. If I was a little off with the click here, that's what it's going to be. Like the feel is there, the vibe is good. I like my performance. I like that drum fill. So. It's pretty minimal with that, and we get the drum take done. And typically, let's say like the first part of Blue Devil that was like roughly 5.5 minutes of the song. That was a full drum take. Maybe we did fly in a section from here or there, but like 80-90% of it, I would say, is the take I did. And you just start doing your guitars, and it's the same approach. And it's like the way that we've done guitars, Nick and I, is we did it for the first half of this, and then we didn't do it for the loud stuff. But like I've always liked capturing some sort of performance with him and I because we play off each other so much.
Right.
So we record together.
Nice.
So you got your DI, and then we mic'd it up. And we did this weird thing that like there wasn't as much bleed through as I thought there was going to be. It's a little, I guess, nerdy, but like. I put my amp because we recorded an old gutted out True Leave marijuana marketing center. So it's like there's all this open space. So I put my amp facing one giant stretch of the hall and his on the other, and they were facing opposite each other. And we put 2 mics on mine, and then 2 mics in. We were about 15 feet apart, and we put a mic in the middle for the. Did we put a mic? Did we end up doing that? I don't recall now. I think we did, but like to capture some like the room vibe of the guitar is mixing. And we did that for 2 of the sections, and then the last 2 sections on Blue Devil, which I know you're like, sections? Where does that even begin? One of the sections I recorded by myself because it was mainly acoustic and like strings and stuff. Yeah. And then the last section where it's like loud and riffs and stuff like that, we did it separately just because it was going to be loud. And I was like, well, I don't want too much bleed. But yeah. So
well, we can start digging into the song itself then, because it's funny you should say that, because the sections to me are obviously different than what they are to the sections to you. So
yeah, I hope that that's also another good compliment is if you would have thought we would have edited here, or like, oh, that's a natural cutoff. Be kind of cool if it's like, oh, that's not where it was.
No, yeah. and in all honesty, I've been in recording studios for 30 years, and I've heard a lot of different styles of recording in that, and I've listened to your piece, and the reason why I asked that question is because it didn't immediately strike me if it was patchwork together or you played through and then overdubbed.
It was patchwork together. It was four sections. So the first section is the first 5.5 minutes roughly, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and then the next section I think is like 8 minutes. There's there's a section at the end where it goes down to strings and a piano and a vocal. It's a very like Led Zeppelin part.
Yes.
And then at the very end, it goes into, there's a string, and the strings get like detuned, and it goes into this acoustic part. That was the end of the second section. And then the acoustic part that has a bunch of EBO and stuff on it. That's like a bunch of cymbal swells, and that was a section by itself that I recorded. And then the last section is where it goes really loud for 7 minutes or whatever.
So
yeah.
I kind of
So 4
want to
parts.
I want to kind of dig in the sections in the way it kind of felt to me like 3 parts.
Okay, cool.
And the first bit was kind of up
Seth,
to,
we won. Litchi.
the first part was up to about 7.5 minutes. And
Okay.
the beginning, really, one of the things that I immediately identified with is the Zeppelin influence.
Yeah.
In the vocals, in the space of the guitar. I'm wondering how it is for you when you're writing the parts like that they do smack of song. They absolutely smack of song, but there isn't pre-chorus, chorus, whatever. Does that seem odd, or now has that become like song to you? Because it's clear to me, it clearly felt like at that 7.5 minute mark, and that was when it started to be more the dueling guitars.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, where the piano thing comes in, the guitar trade off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
where you're trading off and
Yeah.
then you start to play together.
Yep.
And
We call that the Allman Brothers part. Yeah.
well, here I'm going to monkey wrench you, because to me, it's a Slipknot thing.
Oh.
Even though it sounds not at all
Like-
of Slipknot.
right.
But it was the handling of the guitars being hard panned.
Yeah.
And trading off and then becoming one part again.
Mm-hmm.
And I really identified to that. And the question that I wanted to ask there is like, how do you decide when you're going to do like these? How do you manage the amount of sound that you have? Because at points it seems like in the Slipknot context, you got to hard pan the guitars to make sure there's room for them both to be there. If they're both
Yeah.
over the top of each other, it's a fucking shit show.
Right.
But you got the point where you're bringing them together and it's not a shit show.
Right.
So how do you manage the amount of sound that you're having, especially in a big body of work, and you're coming out of the gate with it?
That is probably Billy has given me, or the guy who mixed and mastered it from Audibility. Billy, that's his biggest job probably is like, and that's something that we learned too, is like, one, Nick and I are from day one, the very first album we've ever put out, there was one of my favorite bands is Black Crowes.
Nice.
And Rich Robinson, for the longest time, his guitar was always panned right, and whoever was the lead guitar player was always panned left, and then he switched eventually. So since day one, I've always been on the left speaker. So all of my guitar parts, my leads, except for a few little things here and there, like that I overdub or whatever, that's all me on the left. So if you took your earbud out and you were just listening to the left speaker, that's what I'm playing.
Right.
Nick, he's on the right. So that always made it really easy for us to just be like, okay, you're over here, I'm over here, you're over here. The bass is in the middle. Now that we started adding keyboards to it, that's been a learning experience for me with organs and stuff like that, because then you can start stepping on the toes of the bass and the kick drum and other frequencies, and I'm still learning how to not necessarily compose the part that I want, but it's like I got to play it in a higher register or something like that. And my ears like, it's too high, I don't want that. And it's just like, but you're stepping on the bass frequency now, so it's like I'm still learning stuff like that. And I've gotten a lot of really helpful feedback from Billy with that kind of stuff. But managing all that sound, what's good is that like, and Nick and I, we haven't really ever talked about our sound as guitar players too much. Like, oh, well, you got to turn your gain down and be like this and that. It's like we've just kind of naturally came together.
Love that.
And it just worked. It's always kind of worked out. Like I've always wanted a more, personally me, like a little bit more of a thicker rhythm pickup sound. I like my tone knob at like 3, and that can be a pain in the ass sometimes because it's like you get a lot of mud. But I've learned when to dial in the jangles or like bring my tone up. So it's like he's always had more of a lead guitar player tone regardless, but he's got this incredible Dr. Z amp, and he's got a great ear, and he always is nonchalant. He's like, I don't know, I just turn the knobs and I play it. I'm like, oh, and it sounds wonderful. Of course it does.
Yeah,
But-
there's some great guitar tone on there.
and he and
And you're
again,
always playing a semi-hollow, yeah?
I am. I love him. It's become a little cliche, I think, to play semi-hollows in rock bands, but I don't care. I love them. They're just, you have to fight them a little bit, which is kind of fun because you can get some really cool, like, there's just like a deeper there's a little bit of a, they can be muddy, but they can be really dark sounding.
Right.
And I just like that about them. If I could get away playing a hollow body, I'd do it. But like we don't even have that much gain, but like the amount of gain we do have, I'd be like,
Yeah.
I had this green Ibanez that I played on the whole album. It's all I played on the whole album. And I can't use it live because it just sounds literally like I'm trying to strangle an opera singer. It's like,
right.
live, but like in the studio, you can control that with gates and whatever else in post. But like live, I use this Epiphone Ibanez that I can get the sparkle and the jangle that I need, and I can get the thickness that I need, but it does not feed back nearly as much.
Right.
But yeah, I love those guitars because they're dark and but they can also sound not acoustic, but they can kind of give you they just have a vibe to them, and maybe it's all in my head, but like,
well, it's in my head too.
yeah, I love the way they sound. But yeah, and Nick has this wonderful. He has this really cool SG, but he uses his Gibson, not his Gibson. He uses this Epiphone Les Paul, but he had like all the parts reworked taken out of it, and his friend put some stuff in, and that thing sounds like $1 million guitar to me. So
yeah.
He has both of us. Sometimes we both have coil taps in our guitars, so we can kind of like fake a little bit of a single coil thing. So like we try to figure that out, but a lot of times I think a lot of the credit does go to Billy for like we give him the raw stuff and then he polishes it. But luckily for us, from my understanding, unless he's lied to me to make me feel better, there's not a lot of reamping and like, well, your tone was shit, so I threw out because it's our amps that we use live.
Yes.
We're miking them, and then we do give him a DI to sprinkle in like, well, that was really sludgy, and you wanted to hear more of the arpeggio you're playing, so your DI came up or whatever.
Right.
But like a lot of times, so it's like managing that. But yeah, we are noisy. We are loud.
Well, your guitars are a lot of sonic content.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I was saying before. Is like you got two guitars. Like I always like to write, like even to my detriment sometimes. Like, oh, this is a riff. This is cool. Even then, I'm like, well, we got to harmonize it, and someone's got to play an octave on it when we play it, or we'll both play octave pedals and harmonize. Like it can't be the same thing. Like it can't be the AC/DC thing or the Nickelback thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. Wall of sound, like beating a riff into somebody's head. Everybody's in unison. There are times and place for that. But a lot of times, even when we all play a riff together, which is rare, it's like somebody's got to have a variation on it somehow.
Well, that's kind of the Turnstile thing.
I love, what's that?
Turnstile, the band Turnstile?
Oh, no, I got to look them up. I've never heard of them.
Oh, my God. You get canceled for that. We'll edit that part up.
Okay.
No, Turnstile is unbelievable.
I gotta listen to them. Yeah, I love.
They're like modern hardcore, but with a mad '80s Bad Brains tinge. But,
okay. Yeah, I love. Everything's got to have its place. And Nick and I, like, you've listened to it enough that I don't know if you listen in headphones or just on speakers.
Headphones.
So like. You probably caught that it was panned, and that like him and I, if you're thinking about it, I mean, there's a lot going on, but we're not playing the same stuff, and it's like that to me is important. And the bass usually isn't really playing the same thing
that's
either.
what I was just going to say. So neither is the bass.
Yeah, it's like, and we all like, there's parts where you come together, like somebody's playing something that like is kind of with something else, but it branches off, and like those moments, I love writing that stuff and putting that together because it's like, if you listen to it. You might not hear that on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 listens, but like it's like a 7-layer dip. Like hopefully there's more under the surface, compositionally, musically, what everybody's doing. That's like, oh, that's cool. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, there was reverb on that. Well, no wonder that part. Like you kind of like hopefully, you keep digging your chip deeper. Man, now I want salsa. It's okay.
Now I want 7-layer dip.
I know. I'm sorry,
but I call that power banding. Turnstile is like the contemporary band that's classic for that. They have two guitarists in the bulk of their songs. They play the same parts. They split up obviously in the solos and things, but they power band it. But that's
awesome. I love that shit is awesome, and there's totally, and I'm not a qualifier. I am not knocking on people who write like that or that's what you do. For me, I like to write in like, everybody's got to do something different and kind of complementary, and sometimes it even means that like what I am playing is simpler than maybe what it would have been, and what Nick is playing is simpler than it would have been, but like together it's making a thing that wouldn't exist if it was one guitar trying to play it or whatever. And it's like that to me is fun because it feels like a Rubik's Cube.
That's a fun exercise.
Yeah, because you're like trying to find things where they like intertwine or they intermingle or something that is kind of a thing that we do a lot, and it's like. One of the things I say about songwriting is I think a lot of songwriters, you kind of like, once you kind of drill down on your core elements as a songwriter, that's like your Taco Bell menu. It's like, I have like maybe 7 things that I like to do, and like my goal is to make you think I have a menu of 800. Like you go to Taco Bell and you're like, man, I'm gonna get that chicken thing and that chicken thing and that chicken thing, and they're all different. And the only difference is like one has tomatoes and the other one has sour cream, but they're literally the same thing. You're like, wait a minute, I'm eating the same thing.
Yeah,
it's like there's a sushi place I go to with my wife, and we look at their menu because it's an all you can eat place, and it's decent. And we look at the menu and we're like, wait a minute, like half these rolls are just the same thing except like they spelled crab with a K instead of a C. I'm like, okay, I get
now
it.
Now
I want to know what the sea crab is like. I guess it's not imitation. So you're like, that's the songwriting thing for me is like, I love harmonized arpeggios. Like he plays a chord and I play a chord and we're picking them out in the same pattern, but they're harmonizing.
Right.
You know, and then you have like a groovy, riffy, almost bass line behind it with the groove, with the drums. We do that stuff.
I was going to say, you've always got that solid foundation. Your rhythm section lets you do that. Like you said.
And it's like and that kind of stuff happens a lot where it's like, or, you know, Nick will play a chord progression and I will, or I'll play a chord progression and I'll write a lead part that kind of like flitters in and out of the vocal melody a little bit, and that'll be what Nick plays. And then Jeff will be playing like a harmony of the chord progression that I'm playing, or he and I will lock up on certain notes and he'll go away and I'll go away, or I'll be arpeggiating something and he's playing a riff of that or something. Like you always try to find ways to like. You don't want to like just be like writing different parts for the sake of writing different parts, because then it can just be like noisy and messy.
Yes.
But you try to also make sure that like everyone's got their own moment, so that if you like one of the best compliments I think we ever got when we is like somebody's like, if you isolated just your drums and bass or just your guitar and bass or just this, it would almost be like listening to something different every time because everybody's playing something. I was like, you know what, I'll take that. You know, I think he kind of meant it as like, you guys do too much, but I took it as a compliment. I was trying to like backhand, like, you do too much, simplify your music. I think it was the guy was trying to say to me, but I took it as like a compliment, as like, yeah, we're trying to have a lot of spinning plates, you know, like, and that's the thing. It's hard, but yeah.
I was going to say, and when you accept that challenge, it presents 2 things: something that the keeps the listener on the ride, and then creates that 7-layer dip you were talking about.
Yeah.
But you know, you can always go back to the Led Zeppelin or Rage Against the Machine well when you're writing these shorter songs, and then that'll be a change of pace.
Yeah, I mean,
you can jam on a riff for a couple of bars and run away from it.
I try, and then I'm like, but we can't. We have to do something different. Like it's a little bit of like I've been captured by it a little bit too much sometimes, where I'm like, I think everybody just playing this riff would be fine, and I'm like, but no, we got to harmonize. And I'll do this, or I'll accent these things or whatever. And it's like, no, you don't have to do that. You can come together. It's okay. So like, I think that's a learning lesson for me too. Is like sometimes like everybody needs to be just doing one thing, and like that's more powerful than if everybody was doing 7 things.
Yeah.
But it can be hard.
But if you don't bother to challenge yourself to experiment, you never get to learn that. And I think that's powerful that you guys are willing to do that.
It's true. And I think we'll always have certain like hallmarks, like I was saying, the Taco Bell menu thing for me, where it's like I love taking pretty arpeggio guitar parts and Nick and I are harmonizing on them, but we're playing the same pattern, right? Things like that, or like bass lines that go with the drums a certain way. Like we'll always kind of have those elements in our songs, no matter if they're 30-minute songs or they're 2-minute songs or whatever we're doing. Like those are kind of core elements that I like to touch on as a songwriter. They're not unique. They're just things that I like, that I feel like are a hallmark of what I try to put in our songwriting, and you can apply those in 100 different ways.
Right.
So it's like, that becomes sort of your core identity, is like when a band is like, oh, the band has anybody's band, Zeppelin, because they're one of my favorites. Zeppelin has a sound, right? Like even though Zeppelin was really diverse, like you could listen to any Zeppelin song and probably put it on any album if you weren't thinking about the production sound of their albums, because the production could vary wildly. You'd be like, like Since I've Been Loving You and T for One are maybe the only 2 songs that sound similar to me. They could be the same thing, but like Hot Dog and fucking Immigrant Song, you're like, what?
Right.
What's happening here?
Or like anything on In Through the Outdoor.
Alhambra and fucking, House is the Holy. They're not the same songs at all. I love Zeppelin. But like, Zeppelin still had a sound.
Exactly.
The way he would sing, the melodies he would choose, the way he would operate his voice, the chords that Page would pick, or the way he would strum, or like all these little things come together. So that's, I think what I'm always chasing is like you have your core elements that are always going to be you, no matter what like genre you're trying to inflect, because we're a rock band. We're not trying to be a polka band or whatever, but and we're not trying to like even be like Zeppelin where every song is some different genre take. It's just like you want to have those touchstones, but you still, you want to challenge it as well. So
right.
It's hard because it's like there's certain things. I'm sure when you write music, you're like, man, I love when songs do X, Y, and Z, and I'm gonna do, or not like when songs, but like I like this feeling that I'm getting when I do this thing. You're gonna chase that in every song you write. Even if you try to do it differently, you're still gonna chase that eventual goal of that feeling that it makes you feel. I like songs when I can see it in my head and I feel like I've gotten some sort of visual from a part I've put together.
Yes.
I don't care how it sounds. I want to chase that end goal for myself all the time. And it's like, if I can get there, I can't get there with every part or everything, but like when I can, I'm like, yes. And it's always funny too, the parts that I feel like are the most evocative, like, nobody ever says anything about. I'm like, oh, okay. That song was really, oh, you don't like that? That song sucks? Yeah, I know. Okay.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, then this is where I kind of get into part 2 in the piece.
Okay.
Where you get the break around 10 and a half minutes and the piano and the cello come in. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about what it's like conceptualizing that and getting that in there, because you can do piano and cello in a rock band, but that's where that composition now starts to really flower into, I am on some kind of ride. This is where the rockin' has shifted gears. Yeah,
be honest, that part seem corny to you?
No, I love that.
It's not going to hurt my feelings.
I love that sort of thing.
Okay.
And your acoustic guitar test is my piano test.
Okay.
When I'm writing things, I'll always put in acoustic piano.
Right.
And if it doesn't mesh with the acoustic piano, it's got to go.
Interesting. That's really cool.
Because the acoustic piano, I feel like, is it has to work with that.
That's your purity test. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so keyboards are a new thing for me. I'm not a keyboard player. I don't know chords. It's like I'm the kind of guy who gets like the IKEA furniture and like looks at the thing and like, I'll figure it out. I just like same thing with guitar. I've learned chords and things, and call it stubbornness, arrogance, whatever. It's like I kind of like I play a lot of video games. So like there's a series of video games that they're called Dark Souls. Mm-hmm. And big thing with those games, and this was games when I used to play in the 90s, everybody's like, oh, those Dark Souls games are so hard. And it's like, well, did you play anything in the 90s? Like Contra, Frogger?
Yeah.
Everything was hard in the 90s.
I was going to say, the only thing it could do was get harder. It didn't get more complex. Yes. It just got harder.
Yeah, so it's like the pursuit of, like, I figured this out, rather than someone telling me how to solve the puzzle. I've been playing this game. It's like 10 years old, and I've gone back to it 100 times. It's called The Witness. And it's a puzzle game, and in this game, you think it's stupid. You just draw lines on boards to connect dots. And you're like, and the puzzles become ridiculously complicated. Like, I'm like, have notepads, and I'm like, divide by 7? Saturn's in the 3rd house? What's going on? These puzzles get crazy. But I don't want to look it up. I don't want to be told the answer. It's the same thing with guitar. It's the same thing with piano. Or composing these parts, I don't want someone to tell me, well, that's an E flat and you should go to this or whatever. I just want to figure it out on my own. And if it's wrong, who's to say? Like, I just want to figure it out. This is my thing. This is my little haven, writing music as mini songwriters. It's our safe place. I want to bash my head against the wall for 10 hours rather than someone just tell me and I could have had the answer in 10 minutes. So with the keyboards and the string stuff, I've dabbled with that a few times in our music, but this was like, I had hummed out on a notepad kind of the melody I wanted, and then I was singing along in between it to figure it out. And I was like, okay, I know the notes, so I got to find these on the keyboard. I don't know what they are.
Nice.
And I did, we did the MIDI because it's all MIDI, and then Billy took the MIDI because I had some shitty string preset in what did we use? And that wasn't Pro Tools, it was
Logic.
Thank you. I think it was, yeah. And we sent it to him. He mixes and stuff in Pro Tools, and he found this really awesome like string preset, and he took the original because I played it on a keyboard. The keyboard part that I played, and he ran it through like 4 different string instruments. So then it sounded like a 4-piece string quartet, rather than just like some shitty Mellotron or something, which I originally thought, it'd be cool if it was like a Mellotron thing. And then every time we would listen to like a Mellotron preset, I was like, I want to kill myself. That's horrible. Like, don't ever do that again.
It's only for Strawberry
Fields. And then I'd yell
Fields.
at him like it was his fault. I'm like, why'd you pick the Mellotron? He's like, you wanted it. I'm like, no. But yeah, so it's like, then he put it through these. So like I would hum, and the keyboard stuff, I don't have a way to practice keyboard parts at home. So it's like, I have the part in my head and I'm kind of humming it or whatever, or like even I've tried to kind of like, because keyboard is like left hand, right hand, right? Your rhythm and lead on a keyboard sometimes. And like, we don't need like crazy like fucking Doobie Brothers keyboard player in our band or anything. Like, we got the guitars. We're a guitar focused band,
right?
So like the keyboards to me are like sprinkles and cherries and like little. I think they could have been a little more prominent in the mix in the end, but like a lot of times it's like to bolster something or to create, like, to give a finishing touch to a vibe on a part. It wasn't supposed to be like the keyboards are like because we don't have a keyboard player live. We had one for a little bit, but like we 2 or 3 sections, that section you're talking about, live, we can't do that live without it. So our drummer triggers it on a pad and it comes through the speakers, because otherwise I'd just be singing a cappella like, what's going on? No one wants to hear that. But that part for me was like dipping my toe just a little bit into like a symphonic sort of thing. It's like, that stuff is really cool. And when you mix that stuff, because I think it can get kind of corny. That's why I was like afraid to kind of do it, because I was like, man, this stuff can be, it's like, it's like, oh, it can sound so cheesy. And it's like, but I didn't want to put it like, I didn't want to get too close to Led Zeppelin, because the part before it has the acoustics with strings and then the big drums come in.
Right.
And I was like, all right, I'm like 4 beats away from getting a fucking cease and desist here. Like, we're not gonna get too crazy with it. But it's like, it's fun. It's cool. To me, it was a shift, but like, we didn't want to stay there too long, because I thought it would be like,
I was going to say, it worked really
corny.
well as a bridge into when you go into the 3/4 bit or 6/8, however you're counting it.
I have no idea. Again, remember, it's all in 4 to me.
Well, when the acoustic part comes in and it starts to have that sway, that's 3/4, 6/8, depending who's counting. I was counting it as 3/4 because the guitar's in 3/4.
He would tell you exactly what it actually would be. I would count it 6, I think, but I don't know.
I was going to say, drummer typically going to count that 6.
Every time I try to count them, is this? No, okay, I'll shut up. Let's keep going. But
I love it.
So it goes into that, and I actually had the string. There's the piano parts that I did for there were done. I think it was I had an electric piano part in there, and then we basically doubled the MIDI and put strings underneath it. So the strings are still going on just as a double of the piano part that's in there, but we didn't mix them on top of the guitars and the swelling, crashy, chaotic cymbal stuff. We kind of let them just sit back beneath it. But that is one of those parts live where it's like we've had to play that part almost, not totally different, but like it's way, way stripped back live because we don't have all the keys. So like live, when we play that section, the pad is triggered, we're descending, we go down in, and then like the vocal comes in. Nick is playing the EBow part, which was done with strings as well. So it was an EBow with strings, and I'm just singing with that, and there's nothing else going on. So it's just that. It's quiet. There's no swelling cymbals.
Cool.
Yeah, because it's like that part is so there's so much going on, and it has like the acoustic alone gives it a vibe.
Right.
That it's like me playing it on electric didn't sound right. Even with the coil tap to try to it's not getting captured. So it's like, let's, instead of try to like shoehorn the recorded version live somehow, let's just super tight. It's just a vocal and a guitar. And then the second half of that section comes in with the drums and the toms, and the bass and stuff. And then I come in with my guitar part and it gets bigger. So it gives you like, oh, it went up a notch, and then it goes up a little bit. And then the end of the song with the last 7 minutes or so is just like, distortion.
And that's the last question I want to ask you before the fun one. Talk to me about the end where it starts to get raucous, because that bass at the end, if it's synth or bass or whatever it is,
synth,
that raunchy to me was like the perfect cap.
Man.
Like, so I'm curious how you navigate seeing from where you're doing 6/8, 3/4, whoever's going to police us, to the point where you're going to button this up with something nice and gritty, grimy.
Well, luckily it was because the beginning of Exorcism starts with that same sound, and that was a synth sound that I had wanted some sort of nasty, ugly synth to be there, but almost kind of like an octave guitar, but like obviously in its own lane, it had its own character, not sounding like a guitar. But I wanted something like something kind of like an angry, demonic seagull.
It's a different color from everything that precedes it.
So that it's actually mixed in that last section. It's actually mixed in because there's organ all over that section, that last part, and there's times where you'll hear the synth swelling. And what it is, I don't remember the presets off the top of my head, but Billy and I, when we did Exorcism, because the sound I wanted, he didn't have, and he had like 100 sounds. So he's like, well, why don't we find a sound you like, and then we'll find another sound that kind of sounds like it, and we'll try to mix them together. So that synth sound is an organ sound, mixed with two different sort of synth octave sounds, and we call it the angry pretzel.
It sounds like that.
So it comes in and out on riffs and stuff like that to kind of just give it some weird vibes here and there, and then other times at the last section it's just organ, but we like played with it. But ending the song like that was hopefully, because I'm still messing around with it, but I think we're gonna call because they're both named separately, but if you're like going to put something out called How to Perform an Exorcism and Does the Devil Dream of Blue Skies, that'd be a pretty long title when you put out the full edit. So we're just going to call them like Exorcism, Devil, Full Cycle, or Full Edit, or Full Something, Full Arc, or we're trying to figure out what doesn't sound so up our own ass about it. But like they're supposed to be like, if the one random person on planet Earth, me, presses repeat, it would just be it's just like one loop that you're never getting out of. It's just like, you're stuck in Groundhog's Day. Bill Murray with Guitarist Edition. That's kind of the idea. So it's like that was actually the easiest decision of the whole album, was putting that synth in the last section and doing that because it connected right to the beginning.
You have to bury like a reverse "I Got You, Babe" somewhere live, like trigger that live.
Oh my gosh! Oh.
Like all demon reverse tuned down. You were in Groundhog's Day. You didn't even know it.
Oh man, this was there the whole time. It's been there for 40 years.
We used to do sets where we would play Alan Watts vinyls.
Okay.
And we just let the vinyl play quiet throughout the background of our whole set. So when the songs would get quiet, you'd faintly hear Alan Watts.
Wow. Way to sneak the picture of a 7-Up into the fucking movie image.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I really want to listen to that guy.
In fact, I do believe that it's illegal to do that, but if you're a small enough band, you can subliminally affect people and no one will know.
That's it, subliminal messaging. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's what's he going to do?
Yeah. There is some legality to subliminal messaging, but whatever, it was fun. Okay, so here's the fun question for you.
Okay.
Normally, I like to ask bands when you're going to release a piece of music, who would you play it with, to be the most complimentary way to present this piece to the world.
Like another band or?
Yeah. But I'm not going to ask you that one because I think that the more operative question here is, if you could play both of these pieces together in succession, you can have a full band, all the strings, all the piano, everything, full fucking Cruel Curses level 11.
No, that'd be cool.
Where would you want to perform that?
Oh man.
And I this is my always preface. I can say I don't care if the answer is the moon.
Okay. And the place is going to be packed, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm wondering, and the reason why I'm asking this and not the bands you would play with, I'm wondering what you think the most complimentary setting is for this piece to have the impact that the listener can have if they surrender to it.
There's a place, and I'm sure there's other, and I don't know the name of this venue, and I'm sure there's other places like this. I think that and correct me if I'm wrong, remember, the place that opened in Clearwater, the Sound, is that built sort of as an amphitheater, do you know? I don't know. But I feel like an amphitheater would be kind of cool to play something like this at. Like, there's a place in Greece, I think, that bands have played, and I don't know, maybe it's like a 25,000 capacity, if even that. But I think it'd be cool to, because my immediate thing was like, I'd love to play Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't know. I feel like you would get lost. Like, I would want, I don't know, a venue, man, damn.
Like something ancient, you're thinking something storied?
Yeah. I would want to play somewhere where it's like...
Pompeii, but with people?
They could be dying while it happens. That'd be cool. We're all just melting to death. Like Red Rocks would be cool, right? Something that like has a vibe to it, not just like a giant optical illusion. Like, because I almost feel like something like this would be... you'd want like... there's a place that my grandparents took me a long time ago when I was a kid, and I think it was in Utah, and we saw like The Sound of Music. It was a play, and it was outside, and it was, theaters, like a movie theater, so it was like seats descending down, and it was like maybe 500 people, I don't know, could fit in there, and like all around you were mountains and plateaus and like the sky, and it was open, it wasn't covered or anything. I think someplace like that, I know that's not like a specific venue, but like someplace like that would be cool to do something like that. Have a 4-piece orchestra over here, have a keyboard player over here. That'd be really cool because then, because we've played a couple gigs where we played outside, and like one of my favorite gigs that we've ever played, we played out on like a main street in Daytona, and we played at the end of the street, and it was right by the beach, so there was sand on the street, and there was like a giant Ferris wheel lit up, and it was like you get those moments where like selfishly you can look back and be like, man, there was plateaus over there. That was cool. I know that's not the greatest answer. Like
No, but it's all about the imagery.
I would selfishly want to be able to look back and be like, man, I saw like. That I don't know. You've been out west. It's like the way the sky gets at dusk out there. It's
Yes.
like there's colors that don't exist. Here in Florida, there's beautiful skies in Florida, but there's some really cool. Twilight out in the desert is something to be seen. So it's like, man, I'd love to do something like that. It feels like that would be fitting of it. Because I mean, we've been playing it. We've played it only 3 times now, but we've been playing the full thing 40 minutes, and
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's luckily I don't hate myself. Like,
And when are you doing that again next?
we actually, holy crap, we're really booked up. I'll rattle off real quickly. July 5th, we're playing at the Barter Box in Lakeland. We're going to be in Ocala on the 19th at a place called Mutiny. We're going to be the 25th, which is a Friday, if my memory serves me correctly. July, we'll be at the Nest in St. Pete. We'll be at I punched the mic. We'll be at Oscura on the 26th of July.
And you're going to play the whole...
Oh, we're playing the whole thing all summer. That's all we're doing for the rest of the year is playing this 40-minute thing.
Oh, hell yeah. Well,
So-
I'm there.
Yeah, I'd love for you to come see it live because
Yes.
you're one of the only people who's heard the record because it's not out. But it would be cool to get somebody's feedback from like seeing it in a full 40-minute live performance
Yes.
without being cut. But yeah, so Oscura we're playing there, and then I think we're going to Gainesville a week later, and then the week later I think we're in Sanford, and then we have maybe 2 or 3 weeks off, and we're back in Tampa, and then I think we're ending the summer in St. Pete again. But yeah, so basically starting this weekend, we're playing like every week or every 2 weeks for the next 2 months.
Okay,
And
so
then-
anybody catching this summer
Yeah.
of 2025...
Yeah, the rest of the year because we're gonna go on tour to Texas, like I was saying, and hit Alabama and Louisiana and some other spots in Florida we haven't been to for about like 10 days.
Nice.
That's all we're doing for the rest of the year, and then after this year is over, they're gonna go in the vault. We're not gonna keep playing it, which makes me sad. And Jeff and Nick are like. But
then it can be a
sometimes-
special occasion thing.
To me, it's a little bit like this is a chapter in that book. This is an arc. Like it's not like it could never come back, but it's like we did this thing, and it's like I've been really enjoying it because any band, no matter how big or small, you always get these songs that like you feel like you got to play, and like this has been cool because we're not playing any of our old songs at all.
Nice.
So it's literally like the music we're playing is a year old at most. So it's like Exorcism we've been playing for the last year, and then we've been playing a couple normal songs with it to fill out a set. Now it's just this, and we get off. The funny part is like, hey, this is our first and last song. Bye. And then we just, and then half the time people are like,
I love that.
why is that happening? And then there's the one guy who's like, this was awesome. And then he, you get the one guy who's like, you guys remind me of my band when I was in a band. I have a Gretsch White Falcon at home. Oh, you're over here. What's going on? Like, you always get that one drunk guy who's just like, he wants to be your best friend and he just like wants to join the band.
But see-
I could play, I could do it.
Those guys are the best, though. I always find it funny when people like your stuff and it's a curveball for them, and they have no other way to describe it to you but the things they like. And they'll come up to you and be like, "Oh man, you guys totally sound like Supertramp." It's like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, that's happened a couple times. And the best stuff about that too is like the people who come up to you and they're like they're excited by what they saw, but like they're also like their heydays, they don't do it anymore, and like this is like a nostalgia moment for them, and they're like, man, when I was in '87, I was in this band, man, and it was called Ankle Biters, and holy shit, we were like you guys. Like we get that one a lot where everybody's like they've been in a band and like and then you hear them talk about their guitar for like 20 minutes. You're like, okay, cool. Like you're like, all right, it's cool when you get the people who like genuinely listened, but a lot of times people are either like, cool set, man. They look at you like, you should lose some weight. I'm like, I'm trying. And then there's the other people who are like, who are like, what do they say? Then it's like they're they pine for it. It's like the old football player who like I could have been state champ, man.
Oh, yeah.
And you get those guys who are like, oh, I could have. We talked to this guy named Jeremy who was friends with Carl, who was roommates with Laverne, who was also friends with another person named Laverne, not related, and they knew somebody who walked past the Capitol Records once. We almost had a deal, and it's like, all right, we're gonna talk about that, I guess.
Sweet.
Yeah, but those people are cool too. You know,
Hell
just
yeah.
happy that anybody listened. But
Exactly.
you know.
People, it's just those signs that something resonated with people. That's always rewarding.
But there's always the guys too. These are my favorite guys who stand in the middle of the venue, and you don't know if they like you or hate you, and they.
I always call those the guys that look like a dog that's been shown a card trick.
Yeah, they're like, I can't let you know I like it, and I can't let you know that I hate it, and you're just like,
Yeah.
this
I
guy-
might not know what's going on right
Yeah.
now, but I totally know what's going on right
Does
now.
anybody else smell burning?
Yeah.
I think I have a tumor. Like they're just like, all right, I don't know if you liked it. What's your name? Jim. Cool.
Thanks, Jim.
And you're like, have a great night. Jim's like, I'll try. And you're like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Jim is so ambivalent.
I love it. Well, I'm not going to be Jim. You'll know I like it.
Well, hopefully, we'll see. We'll see. You'll throw lychee at me.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, I can't thank you enough for taking the time
Thanks,
to come
man.
down and sharing your music with us.
Thank
and
you.
Getting this out there to the world. I'm entirely grateful for the music and the conversation, brother.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you putting up with me. Have a great one, dude.
Always, man.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Seth.
You're welcome.